Your warm-up today is an open-ended response. And we have talked about numerous ways to do this. We've talked about, can you give me one of them? My hand.
An open-ended response, you say?
One of the techniques to answer the
Race.
question. Race. R-A-C-E, race. And we combine the R and the A, the response and that part, to be the answer to the question. The C stood for what? To
Cite evidence.
cite evidence, that's exactly correct. And the E stood for what?
Explain.
Explain. So that was the same as another mnemonic device that we covered. In addition to race, what else do we have? Yes. Peter, and that goes with P. Peter is just an extended version of P, P-E-E, because you're adding in a couple of extra sentences. So we're going to, for our warm-up today, you get to go in a minute, not now. I'm going to go through this with you first. But in a minute, you're going to find an article. It can be from anywhere. It can be any website, ABC.com, you know, like one of the major news networks. It could be CNN. That's the one that pops up on my computer all the time. It's my default thing. It could be any, I think we've used Reuters and Alternet as two of our unbiased news sources. So you're going to go there and you're going to find an article. Typically, our warm-up literacy skill for Monday is summary and response. And we're just going to take one small step away from that, and instead of doing a summary and response, we're going to write a P paragraph. So what I did is I found an article. I went to the Austin Statesman, I guess is the name of the newspaper, our local newspaper, the Statesman, the Austin Statesman. And I found an article about the homeless here in Austin and how it's a growing problem with violence with homeless. And that's becoming increasingly something that people are looking at, asking, why is this? What's going on? What's changed? Why would they become more aggressive and involved in more criminal activity? So I read that article, and your first task is to create an open-ended response. So an open-ended prompt that you can do an open-ended response over is one where you can give text evidence. You can use the P or the Peter or the race or whatever, and you can pull textual evidence to cite your answer. Prove it. Like, how do you know? That's always the question. When you answer something, how do you know? You need to ask yourself that and always write that down. Don't just put the answer. And this goes not only on the STAR test, but on anything that you do. Don't just put the answer. If you're doing a social studies response for Mr. Simon, you should be writing the answer the same way. We knew the ancient Sumerians had artwork. We know this because, copy the quote from the textbook, this shows that the ancient Sumerians had all kinds of hieroglyphics and art in caves and walls that they have discovered in ancient lands or whatever. See, that same paragraph structure works for social studies. It would work for science. How do we know that the solar system is infinite? I don't know, I just made that up. So you could answer the question, we know this because, give the text evidence from the textbook, and then tell what that shows. For any subject, even math, if you're doing one of those word problems, you can do this strategy where you pull the contextual evidence from the site, and then you explain what it shows, and you prove it. How do you know that? You prove how you know your answer. So my open-ended prompt that I created, my question, how do we know that Austin's homeless population is increasingly violent? They're getting more violent. How do we know that? That's my open-ended prompt. So here's my response, and you're going to have to do this first. First, before you do anything else, you're going to have to find your article and make a question. And for the class that I had this morning who did this same thing, they found that making the question was the hardest part. Once they got the question down, they did fine with the rest of it, but thinking of how to word a question so that it's an open-ended prompt was kind of a challenge for some people. So just kind of play with it, see what you can come up with. Here's my response. I have 3 sentences. My first sentence, do you see the P over there? This is my answer. The A stands for answer. Wait, let me take that off there in case that's confusing anybody. That's my answer. This was my question. This is the P in P, which stands for what? What does it stand for?
Point.
Point, which is the same as answer. Answer the question, make your point. So I said, Austin's homeless have become more threatening and dangerous during the last year due to increased police reports, including incidents of assault and even murder. That's the answer to my question. How do I know that the homeless are becoming a bigger problem, more aggressive, more hostile, more involved in criminal activity? More police reports. And in one case, there's even been a murder recently. A few weeks ago, the homeless person who murdered the UT student. So you have all of that, and that's part of my answer. The police reports linking them to an increased number of crimes. Now let me continue. After I give that answer, what is the question I need to ask? How do I know this is true? How do I know? Prove it. So I have to go to the source and find a quote. Now, the next sentence, which is the E, I've made my P, my answer. What does the next E stand for in P? Allie, remember?
Point.
This is your point. After you've answered the question, what do?
You put evidence.
Evidence is correct. So this is my evidence. In a recent article in the Statesman, I underline it because it's a newspaper and that's what you do. It reflects a quotation marks. This is where I started copying. 72% increase in criminal activity during 2015, close quotation marks, which proves a disturbing trend, period. That's my second sentence. Now, what is it called when you put your quotes, when you tuck them into the sentence and wrap them up like a burrito, and you've got the sentence all around it, but the quote is inserted in there? Arabelle? Embedded. I want you to know that forever. Moving forward, you're going to embed quotes from now through college. Instead of just doing the quote bomb, that you just drop the quote in the paragraph and then walk away. Don't do that. It's nice to embed it in the sentence, and that's what I did. Here's an example of it for you to look at. In a recent article in the Statesman, it reflects a quotation, 72% increase in criminal activity during 2015, close. I stopped copying there, which I'm still going with my sentence, which proves a disturbing trend, period. So now I have 2 sentences, but I'm not finished. What is the last E on P? I've made my point. I've given my evidence. Now what do I have to do, Yusuf? Explain. That is exactly the right answer. I have to explain it by saying, what does that mean? What does it mean when we say 72% increase in criminal activity? So what is that? I have to explain what that quote means. So I'm going to say in my third and last sentence, these new statistics reflect an increasing number of mentally ill and addicted homeless who have become violent. I'm explaining it. I'm saying this quote shows that there's been a spike in crime, and the article went on to say the reason for that 72% increase is we're seeing more mentally ill and more addicted people out there on the streets. So I have explained this 72% increase, and this is my proof to prove that my answer that I gave in the first part here was correct. So I've got P.E.E. Point, evidence, explanation. 3 sentences. Now, when you do a STAR test and you have those short answer boxes, you're probably going to want to do more than 3 sentences. You might want to have another quote. Yeah, 2. And then like 2 explanations. So it's going to it'll look like instead of P.E.E., it's going to, maybe for the STAR test, it'll be more like P.E.E.E.E.E. Like P period, right? Instead of just P. Because this is short and sweet and it works. It answers the question. It follows the format that you need to do, whatever subject, but it's pretty short. So if you've got a big box, if you have big amount of space, you have room to add more evidence, more explanations, more evidence, more explanations, a few more E's on your P.
You're not supposed to write this down.
I've done other samples with you, so you don't have to write this down. But I mean, how about this? If you think you've got this, because we've been talking about it for about a week, actually. So if you understand how to write a paragraph with these 3 sentences with the P.E.E., it's not necessary to copy it. But if you're still a little bit muddy, fuzzy, foggy, and you're kind of like, well, I sort of get the main idea, but I don't know, this embedded quote thing is kind of weird, then sure, copy my example. I hadn't really thought about that as being copyable, but sure, why not? If it helps you, whatever helps. I just wanted to break it down for you together and model this for you so you could see another